Welcome to MSP Unplugged. I'm your host, Paco Lebron. This is the place to learn how to run your MSP, whether you're a nimble MSP or leading a team for the journey. This is the place for you. Let me go ahead and introduce my co-host. We have Corey Kirkendoll over at 5K Technical Services. Corey, how are you today?
Doing well, brother. Doing well, man. Good to be here and excited about the show today.
Very good, very good. Also got my other partner in crime. You know him, you love him. Elizabeth's own, Newark's own, Union's own, all of Jersey's own, Mr. Rick Smith over at Renactus Technology. Rick, how are you today?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Making it through the day, making it through the week. Looking forward to what we got going on.
Hmm.
I hear that. Looking astute, my friend. Looking astute. We're going to go ahead and kick off our tip, trick, or story for the week today. Rick, do you have a tip, trick, or story for us this week on this episode?
Yes, I do. And this is something that is not news to anyone, but if you're not practicing it, you should, and you should make it a priority. And that is automation. And this is we onboarded a new client. We're onboarding a new client. Our onboarding process takes really 30 days. And that's what we say to every client now. It takes 30 days. But what we have done using our CRM and automation, we've pushed out a lot of that paperwork now. So that is now, so certain things now we don't have to necessarily touch or do. So we've gotten out our initial email to the client. It's all automated in our CRM system. The initial email, the onboarding forms that we need them to fill out. We get notification once that's done, which sends other information out, sends their payment, the link to the payment link to get them to go to the portal, put their payment information in. Once that is done, it just the series of things that it goes through to help us, and then it brings the forms in. And rather than scrambling back and forth with doing things manually, this helps us. We can fill out now what we need to fill out, but a lot of it we have so that when information comes back to the CRM, it through some third-party mediums, it basically bounces back and ends up right in our PSA RMM platform, which I just think is good. So again, it has been a time saver for us, and it's also enjoyable to watch and see the process work. So I'm just saying, I know everyone has a process, but automate it as much as you can to take some things off your plate.
Automation is key if you want to get some of that time back for sure. Mr.
Love
Kirkendall, you got a tip, trick, or story for this week?
it. Yeah, man. A tip, man. We do a lot of SharePoint migrations, man. We have a lot of family attorneys, man, and it's amazing of how long they can make those file path names and things, man.
Yep.
It's crazy. So one of the tricks that always catches everybody and it gets us all the time, and either where you're going to go SharePoint or not, man, is that 400 character limitation that SharePoint's put on you. That spaces, special characters, that's everything. And what you'll find out is you'll have a restriction where either files don't open or they'll just fail. So what I say is make sure you do your due diligence and run some scripts inside of your file folder, environment to make sure that you're not hitting that limitation, so you know what that looks like. Because in the end, SharePoint may not be the file sharing, syncing documentation thing that you may want to use. Maybe you want to be looking at something else, because it will change the entire process of how a firm or how a business will do SharePoint, and it can get pretty rocky for you, the MSP. So please pay attention to that. Look at for that, because it will bite you. And once it bites you once, I guarantee it will not happen again.
hmm Yeah, those are the days of long paths. And thanks, Microsoft, for the Five Explorer. That's not keeping up with modern workforce. But hey, who am I to say anything about that? My tip for this week is, for our policy when we're onboarding a client, we start from edge to all the way to keyboard. So we start with the domain, and taking over that domain for a client. As everyone knows, although our clients feel that the domain or the .com is only for their website, it controls so much more. And so we made a policy to adopt those domains into our domain registrar. However, as you are transferring domains, make sure that the hosting providers, name servers, are not on the domain server, because if you pull that transfer, you will not only break the records that are inside of that system, and in the reverse, if a web developer changes the name servers inside of the domain, if they have access, we'll also break things such as email, website, security,
Mhm.
spam, DMARC, you name it, it's going to break it. So we went through a domain migration this week. As we started to go through it, we realized the name servers belong to a hosting website. So we had to go ahead and run through the hosting site, make the transfer, make sure that the records were good to go. Once they were all copied over, we flipped over the name servers and then transferred that domain out. So a little bit more work than what we were expecting, but that was a fail check that we didn't check to make sure those name servers were on the proper hosting before the transfer. But we were able to catch it before we caused any great damage. So we were able to make those changes so it could be a flawless transition and the client did not notice a thing. So as you're transferring domains, check the name servers, make sure they're in the right and proper spaces. All right. Well, today's episode, we're going to be talking about, I led to it earlier, good old Microsoft. Microsoft 365, the essentials for MSPs, tools, tips, and best practices. And so this is something that we've been talking about a little bit here. I've been immersing myself more into Microsoft over the last several months and utilizing a lot of the Copilot features, how to integrate a lot of the tools that are inside of the business premium licensing. One note to kind of highlight, if for those that who tuned in, last week, I was on the IT Business Podcast, and Marvin had actually highlighted, because I didn't know this, is for all nonprofits. They are canceling the grant for Microsoft 365 Business Premium and also for E1 licensing as of July. So if you are month to month, you will be either getting a bill for, I think it's 25% of the licensing cost. But for business basic, that is still included in those subscriptions. So start having those conversations with your clients. If you have nonprofit clients that are taking advantage of this grant, make sure you highlight that as well. But for this episode, we wanted to make it a tangible one. We've been really talking about a lot of business advice and business process, but we wanted to dive in and really talk about, what are we doing for our MSPs? What are some tools? What are some tips? What are some best practices that we're implementing into our side of our MSPs? And I'll go ahead and start off with Mr. Corey Kirkendoll. What do you got going on as far as Microsoft? How are you leveraging it? What is your baselines? How in depth are you utilizing all of that is inside of Microsoft 365?
Yeah, man. I believe that Microsoft is one of those great equalizers when it comes down to where it comes from. We have probably one customer that is on Google Workspace, but everybody we have is on Microsoft. And we push and lean towards that one because it allows us to standardize, helps us do it, and it makes us better and become experts in it because we leverage it ourselves and we move forward. The first thing, man, is figuring out what the secret decoder ring of which license and what you need to be buying and what's what. That's the hard part. And what I would say is you need to lean in hard to your distributor, no matter who that is, whether that's Pax8 or OpenText or ShareWeb, whoever that is, to make sure that you got a good handle on understanding what you need to make up from some secure, mobile secure, between premium, basic, teams, whatever that is, because you can end up picking the wrong one, or you can end up picking two of the same thing that you don't need to be paying for because it's included in one or the other, right? So you always want to make sure that you're on your licensing piece and going down that path. But the first thing that we do, and because we're going to be at the show in a couple of weeks, is what I would recommend everybody that we learn and we use very heavily is the 365 hardening guide that Pax8 put out. If you haven't read that, you haven't spent time with that, it's actually a free guide that they give you, but it tells you all the knobs, all the bells and whistles, and all the things that you need to go and tweak to turn down and close up things. And what we did with that is we took that, leveraged one of our automation tools and said, here's what we want to get done. So for every client that comes on, we push that hardening stamp of what we look and closing up all those accounts and closing up all those holes. And that's what we do. And we actually charge that as a 365 hardening practice that we do. And we go down that path to make sure we close it up, put the right permissions, make sure we got things that are turned on the right way. And we go down that path because there's just so much. If you think that you're secure just by turning on 365 and opening it up, put a password on, turn on MFA, Unfortunately, you're sadly mistaken. There's a lot of other things you got to go turn on and you got to work through. So I would say the first thing is find you a hardening guide and making sure that you're closing up all the things, not only for your customers, but also for you as an MSP. That's kind of what we do, and it works out very well for us.
Very cool. Very cool. Mr. Smith, how in depth are you with Microsoft 365 with your own MSP? And what do you got going on as far as leveraging the tools that it provides you?
I'm going to say this first, and I mean this in the most positive way. Microsoft 365 is one giant pain in the in the anus, but that is a good thing and not a bad thing. I mean, you have to stay on top of it. Things change rapidly. We just talked about right now. Paco, you just gave the example of what's happening with nonprofits, right? I didn't know that until you told me the other day. And things like that. So you have to stay on top. But one of the things I think for MSPs, Microsoft, if you're in the Microsoft, and I'm going to say it this way so that we don't say this is what you have to use, but if you're in the Microsoft ecosystem, you have a lot of things at your disposal that you're probably paying other vendors for, right? First and foremost. Secondly, you're probably using, and we're guilty of this as MSPs as well, we're probably using maybe 10% of what the package we have is capable of using. And I think we do, and it's hard. We got so many things we have to go through, and so many things we have to learn, know, study, whatever, to keep our businesses running, to keep our clients safe, but I think if we step out a little bit more and start to utilize more of the options that Microsoft brings to us, we find things a little bit easier. We always talk about that goal of that quote unquote one pane of glass, right? That quote unquote not to have to open up 20 different windows to manage your business for the day. Microsoft, for its part, does a good job of consolidating a lot of those things that we do. And I think some of it we just don't know. I think others we just don't trust, right? And if you don't know it, it's one thing. And you can make it, if you do know it and you don't trust it or you want to go a different way, at least you're making an informed decision. So if you're going to ask me for one tip today, my tip for Microsoft 365 is really learn the program or learn what's out there and how it could benefit you, your personal MSP, but also how you can bring that to your clients. And I'll give one quick example. Everyone gets annoyed. If you don't use Teams, you get annoyed that when you restart the computer, Teams pops up, right? And anyways, can you turn this off? So I had this conversation with a client the other day. And I said, do you know what this does? And I explained to them, because they pick their doctor's office, 3 doctors, they have like 11 machines. So everyone's doing something. They pick up the phone each time to call somebody else to ask them a question, right? Sometimes that's in front of a patient. Sometimes that's in front of, me or whoever. I said, you can use this really as your, internal phone system, like not using the phone, but you can type information, send information back and forth. You guys can communicate this way. And it's, I didn't know that this was, but that's what this was for. So, shame on me for not explaining that earlier, but now they have something else that they can use. Now, if you have, and I'll say this and leave it here, as far as Teams goes and everything else, the sharing documents and working on a document at the same time, knowing who's working on what is a great feature. Also, if you have clients or are in more than one office, that's also a great way to use Teams to communicate back and forth. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. But my tip is really learn what's in there, how it can benefit your MSP first, and then how you can help to expand that to your clients.
Yep. Like you both said, right? Microsoft 365 is such a massive system and ecosystem in itself, right? And there's just so many licenses and so many features and tools available for each individual license, right? And so going to your distributor will often help you just understand the kind of the ecosystem. But some people may want to be a little bit prepared to what the questions are. I have heard scenarios where MSPs who either are on hosted exchange and are trying to jump into the Microsoft realm from their provider, or they are a Google Workspace client and they understand Microsoft is important for them because maybe all of their clientele is Microsoft and they're the odd one out. And you really can't truly learn the system unless you actually live in it, right? You got to drink your own champagne, eat your own dog food, whichever the phrase you like to use, and really to understand it. But one of the websites that I feel that has really helped me to really understand licensing, what tools are available, and things of that nature is m365maps.com. Now, this website is updated by an individual contributor, and what he does is he will tie any of those licenses or products and will let you know what's included, what's not included. Is Entra P1, or I'm sorry, is Entra ID P1 available in here? Is P2 available in the next license over? Can I purchase this separately? So this will give you kind of the web of tools that are available on that particular product line, and it's free. You just go in, it's an interactive menu. You have the ability to do that as well. Again, working with your distributor is also an alternative to allow you to just understand what is available with Microsoft and how do you kind of work through that process. The other piece of it is for those that are using Microsoft, you know, as Rick mentioned, there's so many changes, there's so many updates that occur, whether it's the health of the system, whether it's changing of product lines, even down to security settings that they're implementing where I think maybe it was about a year ago or so that where they were implementing security defaults as a default for those that had not any type of security settings in place. They had went ahead and implemented modern MFA procedures and getting rid of legacy and per user MFA and preparing for that transition. So these are things that sometimes may catch you off guard because there's just so much information that comes from Microsoft. Well, the Admin Center is a great resource for you to maybe just peruse and then the morning of and look at the health services, look at what's going on for updates, make sure you're subscribed to the email updates and actually read the email updates or copy them and summarize them in Copilot and see what's going on if there's anything that you need to worry about. But these are things that will help you in the long run. I can't tell you how many times where I'll get a phone call from a client and it'll say from our help desk, it says, hey, I can't access Teams right now, or hey, phones are not working inside of Teams, or I can't send out an email. And we're doing all this troubleshooting to then realize that Microsoft had some type of outage or degradation when we could have just looked at the health status. And so these are little things that will help you save a lot of time, but they will also help push you forward on the real things that you want to try and leverage inside of Microsoft. Gone are the days where it's just the Office suite, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc. There's just so much that's involved, especially if you're using the business premium license, which is the one that we use because it's the most bang for our buck. You know, we're leveraging many of the tools in there, one of them being Entra ID. And for those that don't know what Entra ID is the old Azure Active Directory, and simply is how do I tie a system into the Microsoft ecosystem so that way I can monitor some of the simple things that are inside of there. I don't have to worry about running a script to get the BitLocker code because it's already in there. I can go ahead and take a look at some of the stats and who's assigned to that user of that system. And this is not even talking about any of the items that you can do in Intune, which is available inside of the business premium licensing, which we leverage as well. So these are just a few things where if you're just trying to jump in and just try to use more, Entra ID can be an entry level way for you to get into it and understand each user profile a little bit better, how to manage dynamic groups, how to be able to apply certain conditional access policies. You know, there are different ways to really leverage on how to protect your user because truly right now, we are no longer in the endpoint era, in my opinion. Everything is all about identity and who you choose as your identity provider, which we chose Microsoft in this instance, allows you to really figure out, okay, how do I make sure that this person is going to ensure that he is productive and secure no matter where he is for his environment? And that's how we've been using Microsoft a little bit for that. Rick, when as far as for diving into Microsoft, I know that or specifically Microsoft 365, there are, I know you're a server guy and you still have a lot of those on-premise things that are on place. is there a way that you determine, or is there certain tools that you have allowed you to be more focused on cloud or help provide flexibility to a client on the Microsoft tool set, versus what you used to do when you used to have a lot of on-prem items that you may still use to today?
Yeah, well, okay, we still use. I still have a lot of servers, not a lot, but we have still a significant amount, more than I would like. Paco drives you nuts with that. I drive Paco nuts, excuse me, when I say I had to go work on a server. Just yesterday, we got a client who called yesterday morning as I'm in the gym working out or on my walk working out, who sent an email that the server was down, and you got to, physically go in, and I had to physically go to the location. Thankfully, it was close to where I was, so it didn't take much time. But we are starting to leverage the cloud more. All right, we are starting to build. What I've realized too is this: like I like to touch. That's just been me. So I grew up in the physical server environment. Computers, physical. Okay, but God, you guys. Come on, man. This is a tech show. Anyway, so I'm a hands-on type guy. So it's easier for me to diagnose something when I can see it, feel it, touch it, whatever. But as our business has evolved, as work has evolved, we spend less and less time now on site, right? We do most of our work remotely. Why not do our servers remotely? So we have been trying to figure out best ways. We've built cloud environments now. We've built server environments in the cloud, and the clients really don't know the difference because we make the turn to push them to the server side. So they don't really necessarily know that the data is no longer in that room in the back with all the wires, that it's somewhere, that they're pulling it from somewhere else. So the Microsoft ecosystem, and this is something I wanted to mention this too. This is a little off topic, but when Paco was talking about keeping up with what's going on, one of the other things about Microsoft that will drive you absolutely nuts is the name changes, right? And the names for everything. And I can't remember one time. Azure used to be everything, right? Used to have the Azure AD, the Azure Active Directory, Azure this. You used to log into Azure for everything. Now it's Entra ID, but Azure still exists, but Azure now is the cloud portion of all of this, if I'm saying this right. Like, so you build servers and cloud machines in Azure. So it's just a little, so Azure didn't go away. It just, the name is just not as widely used anymore in the Microsoft ecosphere. But as far as that goes, I think one of the great things about it is you can now build those same environments in the cloud. So using Azure to do that is a great help. And then it does save you time, because when you get a call and something is wrong, you know where to go, and you don't have to get in your car or truck or whatever you use and go there. So that is something that we are pushing more and more of as environments allow.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Wow, this is a good topic, man. I look at it as the world of the traditional MSP is going to take a while. They're going to be servers on-prem because there's requirements because of some type of regulation or regulatory situation that says here's what it is. Or if you like Rick, we like to touch it, see the blinky lights. That's all cool, right? But eventually go. But as your customer evolves and go towards more, we want to go towards the AI and looking at a different situation, it's going to force that information to go towards the cloud, to be more up there from that perspective, to have the ability for that model to be able to access that data and where you want to go. So there's a huge opportunity for MSPs to migrate that way, right? There's a project cost in there, the simplifying of what that looks like, but also does some really cool stuff as well. Is most people like the server on-prem and they have it because one of the things that will happen is if I lost the internet connection and I was working on a server on-prem, I never knew that it happened. Right. But now when the internet goes away and your stuff is in the cloud, now you know immediately what's happening, right? So there's some design pieces that come back in. Hey, I need a redundant connection. I need something else. I need to be able to build those things in that puts you back into, hey, there's another opportunity for a revenue situation. It says, hey, we need to have dual links. We need to do some things and upsell on some other stuff. But I think that the other part about this is that if you look at where Microsoft is going with how it handles the federation and how it puts everything in and how you can communicate once another, you can eventually, it's almost scary, you know, when you start thinking about, you know, Skynet from the Terminator and all that stuff, how it all connects, right? If you really look at where this thing is headed, it's like Microsoft will have the ability to, whether it's, you know, it's ProdigyTeks or it's Renactus or whatever your customer, to be able to really have an easy way to communicate across each other, share. They do some really futuristic stuff that's coming really, really fast, if that makes sense. So, I mean, it behooves us to start to go down this path, because I think the day of everything on-prem and offices and workspaces is going to go away. So we have to be in a space to go do that. But I think the biggest challenge for me is man, when you say Microsoft and secure, it almost like an oxymoron, right? Like, oh my gosh, right? What the heck is that about? But if you really look at Gartner, one of the most secure and most where it comes from when it comes to all the security pieces, Microsoft is always killing it in that top quadrant of where it comes from, even though we get, you know, 75 patches and 50 days weekly, right? But it's definitely the way to go and to change, because it's the way. And then there's a whole lot of other things out there that comes along with that. As you get specialized in certain things, Microsoft has the ability to enable you to get leads, to actually go in and work with the partners and do some stuff. There's a whole nother ecosystem of partner program back there that you don't have access to if you're really not into it. So continue to grow your business. And so you can't run away from it. You need to embrace it and go towards it, is what my comment would be.
I just wanted to add something. Corey was talking about all of the different things and how all the data is coming into Microsoft. And we talk about AI. It's like all of these happen, and then Copilot comes and takes control of everything, right?
Yeah, man. That's right. Resistance is futile, baby.
Exactly.
I, for one, welcome our AI overlords, and for those that are, but you know, I think it's a very big misconception when it is brought up about Microsoft and security. I think a lot of people tend to still just keep focusing on the endpoint of where they're at and the licensing of what's included. There was a recent post I saw on LinkedIn not too long ago that they were saying that some ransomware or a ransom team made a post and said, yeah, Microsoft Defender is like butter. We just peel that off and then we're inside of the ransomware. And what they don't understand is that they didn't clarify what about Microsoft Defender. So, you know, you had all the pro AV, next gen AV MSPs like, yeah, that's why we use X and this is why we use Y, and because blah, 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 blah. And what they don't understand is that, of course, anything unmanaged is going to cause a big hole in there. But when they look at, like you mentioned, Gartner or some of these other programs, and they highlight the security pieces of it, the licensing is what matters and the type of product it is. It just so happens that Microsoft Defender that's built into all the Windows systems is called the same thing as Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, Microsoft Defender for Microsoft 365. And so when you're looking and highlighting those security products, even down to now having the ability to add E5 security on top of Business Premium and bringing Endpoint for Defender Part 2 onto there, you've really just enhanced it being a true next-gen AV, and really doesn't have the ability to get peeled off, as they said, or I forgot what the wording they used on the post, but you're not comparing apples to apples. And that's where we get hung up on, is there's just such this misinformation that you're trying to figure it all out. And it doesn't, and Microsoft doesn't help with the naming conventions, as you mentioned, Rick, where either the changes of naming or naming something the same thing can cause confusion. I remember I had a client way back when who was trying to onboard. He says, look, I'm just trying to figure out, do I need to create an AVD to sign in with Azure on my systems? I was like, no, it's Azure Active Directory at the time, now Entra ID. It's completely separate than you having to spin up a server to sign into your systems. Well, how do I do it? And so being able to show them to just tie their email address to their system, and now they have their own profile that's managed through that system, was a game changer for them because of the confusion and them not having the proper material to be able to figure that piece out. I think the other piece to this, right, and being, you know, handsy, is we're at a point of being able to say that this term modern workforce has been really ramping up, especially after the last 5 years. And so the big piece of how do we enhance modern workforce with AI, and how do we become that much more efficient? And so bringing everything together, trying to drive that change. And so, you know, for us, it's like, well, how do we update our strategy? How do we ensure that we put as many, or I'm sorry, as least amount of agents in my world to ensure you're getting the same quality and security that you're looking to do moving forward with Microsoft 365? I say this because, you know, oftentimes, and I think we all have been there as well, where there'll be RMM platforms that have been selected to do the patching for those systems, and oftentimes leave a less than desirable result because either auditing hasn't been done, it hadn't been configured properly, things of that nature. Whereas if you were to use that same dedication and understanding of the Microsoft system, could it achieve the same route? Because sometimes it gets disabled by adding additional software into something that you already have, right? And so that ability of understanding the tools that are available to you can help you bring not only flexibility, but also the throughput for modern workforce. And so when I say modern workforce, I'm talking about those that are either remote, hybrid, meaning they're working from home a couple of days, going into the office, or fully remote, and there is no gateway that's guarding the perimeter. And now you have to implement other tools and features for that reason. And how are you patching those systems? How are you keeping those up to date? You know, how are you making sure those systems are staying on and not in sleep mode because everyone has moved to laptops instead of desktops? And so these are things that from that modern work era, you have to really strategize and understand, all right, well, what do I need to do? So one of the tips, at least for us, is we were concerned about backup. And, you know, our big issue is, all right, if we're looking at this as a holistic approach, and Intune, which has been our automation piece for handling profiles and applications and deployments and things of that nature for clients' PCs, is how do we make sure that their system is going to be intact if a device is stolen, device is damaged, device dies, you know, and things of that nature. So I won't go into much of the business process things of it, but specifically for Microsoft, the backup piece was of concern because if the computer was asleep, we didn't have the ability to do so, we were concerned. And so what we did was we updated our backup strategy to be, all right, if you're a file-based backup, where you got to make sure your stuff is in your desktop, your documents, or your photos folder. If it's outside of those three folders, we are not responsible for the backup. We then have that synced and backed up into OneDrive because it's all tied into the Entra ID. And then we have our third-party cloud backup backing up the OneDrive system. So not only have we created a two-prong backup software, right? We have on endpoint, which is OneDrive, and backing up the cloud OneDrive as well. That allowed us to not have to worry about if the computer is on for backup. And so the only thing we have to do is just monitor the status for OneDrive. If the OneDrive service stopped, restart the service. And that'll ensure that the status of the OneDrive is on and we continue that backup. So these are the things that, you know, as far as a tip for Microsoft, you know, 365 Essentials is that has allowed us to maintain that piece and quite frankly, drive down cost on being able to say, all right, we've monitored and we've got everything inside of Microsoft. And now we just, you know, put a little bit of CYA at the end to make sure we're on our end. Corey or Rick, is there anything that you've done to kind of switch it up a little bit?
So what I love what you do, man, if you start bringing that and take that back, man, what you did is you brought in business continuity, disaster recovery, right on down to your customer, right? And right into the point where it's a different conversation. I always tell people is, I mean, I could back you up and that's great. But at the end of the day, it's just backup. But what you did was you brought in disaster recovery, business continuity in that perspective. And you took some of that piece out that, you know, that people always had. It's like, hey, I'm not backing up your desktop. I'm not backing up your pictures. If you didn't do that, you took that whole away from them to where, hey, all I do is what we try to do all along is just use your computer. We'll worry about where everything goes and you just let them do what they do. Right. Which is very, very cool. And how you kind of roll back with that. And those are the features and functionality that by going this route with the modern workforce and really going to it, it allows you as the MSP to really guide how you're driving the business productivity and bottom line of your customer. And you're hitting them right where it means, right? You're showing them value, not necessarily for you, but it's for them as well. And the only other piece I will say as we go down this path by accepting some of these Microsoft things, everybody remembers back in the day of the Novell certified network, right? All that stuff, right? Those certifications were big. What we've also now been able to do is now bringing out these certifications back and having our employees become experts in these areas and certify on Azure and modern workforce and all this good stuff. It's kind of reinvigorated them to become, trained up on those guys. We're helping them professionally get better, helping us get better. And it's just, as a whole, it's another way to continue to foster innovation and also foster them to continue to grow inside that as well, right? Because there's only so much you're going to learn about, on-prem endpoint stuff, right? It just doesn't work. But this right here is a whole another area that we as an MSP are able to do and offer to our employees, man. It's just, it's reinvigorating them to get involved because there's some really cool stuff.
Yep.
And I'm just going to add this, and we talked when Paco started this, and Corey touched on this as well, about adding things and just expecting it. You're doing a disservice to yourself and to your clients if you just put something in and just expect it to work, right? You have to understand it as best you can, or get someone on your team, like as Corey was talking about. Maybe you don't have to know everything yourself, right? If you have a team or a couple of people, have everybody or some people specialize in a couple of things that they can understand, so that the burden doesn't always fall on one person to be the quote unquote Microsoft 365 expert, because that is a lot of stuff to be an expert on, right?
Yep.
So, to have a general understanding of it is one thing. But the other thing I want to get back to is, don't just turn it on and expect it to work, right? And just leave it. Hey, I got business premium now, so everything should be great. I can now use, it's all great. No, it's not. And it's you may run into two scenarios, right? One, it's on and it's good, but the secure, you got to check things like the secure score, these baselines that are in place are there for a reason, so that you can know, like, I guess hardening is the right word to say, right? You need to harden this to make a secure system more secure, or from taking a simple switch latch to getting a real padlock on the door, right? To block things up. That's first and foremost, is just knowing what to, like to tweak the systems to harden it. And then they may come to the point where you do need some other third-party product to help you along, right? And this is not to say you should live in Microsoft 365 as the end all be all for every MSP. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is, there are a lot of things we should be using. We use, I would say 99.9% of our clients use email, right? And of those, probably another 90% of that, 99.9% are using Microsoft, right? And Microsoft is more than just the email. And like, as Paco said earlier, it's more than just Office 365 or the basic that we're used to of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and how all of those things work together is important. And I just think we should take advantage of, if we're talking about saving money, saving time, saving effort, we have something right in front of us that could be helping us out probably a lot more than we are allowing it to, because we have, and I've been guilty of this too, the Microsoft bias, right? I want to point this out to him, and then I'm going to let it go. But Paco talked about breaches and stuff that happen, and I always make this point, because I'm not a Apple user, right?
Thank
And
God.
everyone says Microsoft always gets Microsoft always gets breached. That's why I go to Mac. Well, if you have 90% of the market, why would I spend waste my time trying to get to 10% of the computers when I can get to 90% of the computers? That's first. But secondly, I know Corey's going to chime in on this, but secondly, I want to say this. A lot of times breaches happen in Microsoft products or Windows or Office or whatever it happens, is because we don't do the basics. We don't password protect them. We don't turn on things that we need to turn on. We don't turn on MFA. We don't go, a step further to make it happen. And that's our fault if this happens and we haven't done, when you look at a reflection on why did this happen and you realize I didn't take the time to do a couple of things that I could have done that may not have prevented it, but it could have made it a little harder, right? Because again, if I'm a thief and I'm on a block with a whole bunch of houses and I want to break into somebody's house, I'm going to go to the house that offers me the least resistance, right? Why waste time on trying to get through 3 locks, then an alarm system, and then a dog, right? When I could just go to the house that left the door open and nobody's home, right? So this is the way we have to look at this. So when using 365 or any product, but when using 365 or using Microsoft in general, you still have a responsibility to do your part to make it secure, to make it right, to make it work for you, and to make it work for your clients.
Yeah. Well said, brother. Well said, except for the Apple pieces, but it's all good. No, I like it. It's good.
I will add that for those that are listening, Rick said a word that I want to make sure you all do not use as you're communicating some type of compromise, and it is breach. As you're talking to your clients, if anything ever were to occur, it is a data incident. And the reason why is because data breach is a legal term. Until it's been deemed by a lawyer to say a breach, it is a data incident. A phishing email, a spoofing email for gift cards, and you letting someone in and ransoming your whole place are all a data incident. So if I implore you, and I've been told to this by 2 MSP lawyers in the industry, do not use the word data breach when you're talking to your clients or anything in referring to something happening that is of a compromise. You want to use the word, a phrase, data incident. So just want to make sure that that's highlighted there. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to go ahead and dive into a couple other tips, round out the show, and go from there. But most importantly, is want to talk about my favorite thing, and that is going to be TechCon Unplugged, Chicago stop for the tour. If you haven't heard, we're on the road, and it's going to look a little different. Instead of you coming to us, and I know you all want to, and we appreciate every one of you, we're coming to you. We planned 3 cities in our own backyards, and the second stop is in Chicago. It's going to be on June 20th at the Hyatt Lodge. It's right over at the old McDonald's campus. For all you locals, you know what I'm talking about. It's a beautiful place, great looking lodge. It gives you like some little cabin feel if you want to get a little bit of getting outside of the normal Chicago area. But we're going to be talking about a lot of great things. We're going to have a great pre-event. My good friend Tahir Hamid over at MSP Camp is going to be throwing a MSP workshop, and it's really going to be titled Making MSP Marketing Easy. What is your highest ROI first steps that you can take in marketing? We're going to bring you a live podcast, and we're going to be sharing what us 3 talking heads do what we do best, and we're going to talk about how to improve and scale your business. We talked about what's keeping you up at night last time. This time, what are you doing to make sure that you can move forward from there? And we're going to have what we're calling our MSP office hours. This is our MSP roundtables. Think of being able to have a boardroom of multiple like-minded MSPs and really capturing that hallway magic that I used to like to say at conferences, where you're talking about things that matter most to you. This is not a structured topic, but we're going to have some guidelines around the way. But it could be anywhere from AI, operational efficiency, even tool sprawl, because we all know that shiny, syndrome is going to be something that you want to try and take. And you may have some questions if you should make that jump. We're just going to be talking about opening up our books there, talking about how we're running all of our businesses. It's going to be a great time. And like any TechCon event, there will be an evening social, so we can continue the conversation. So I implore you, head over to MSPUnplugged.com. You'll see the TechCon Unplugged link there. Purchase your ticket, and we will hope to see you over at TechCon Unplugged Chicago Stop. And because I love you all, use my name, and you get half off on the ticket, but don't let the guys know that we like Chicago better. So anyway, MSPUnplugged.com, and I hope to see you there in Chicago. All right, fellas. So you know, we run through, you know, quite a bit of how vast and really versatile how Microsoft 365 is on the many avenues of what we're doing. You know, for me, you know, I want to peel that back a little bit further and really looking at something that Rick mentioned was automation and really how are you implementing some of these things. Now, for those that are listening, you may have some automations in place with your PSA or your RMM. Your RMM may be deploying some tools, maybe some applying some scripts, but you know, kind of how we have approached this, and I learned this from, and for the life of me, and Rick, you may be able to help me who this individual was, but there was a gentleman inside of the tech tribe that had a interview that talked about an hour long. It's a little dated now, but it basically explained how an MSP's viewpoint or user view of how to set up Intune properly. And so I want to say it was like Carl Gray,
Oh,
Earl Gray.
no,
I can't think of the gentleman's name, and I can see his face, but
crap.
but if you're in the
It'll
tech
come
tribe,
to me.
if you look at the tech tribe, you'll see Google. I think search Intune, and you should see the conversation that he brought up, and he really just full on provided open book. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I've gone. And the reason why I say it's dated is because Microsoft has changed quite a few things since that video. But that's really where I got to started. And so what was basically explained was if it's system based, we'll let Microsoft do it. If it's third party based, we'll let the RMM do it. And so that's how that division of labor was done. So, you know, being able to deploy a script that says enable BitLocker, being able to set certain parameters like power settings and things of that nature, setting the home page, syncing SharePoint libraries and things of that nature. So these were all based in, I wouldn't say GPOs, but policies that you can implement in Intune. Some of these were kind of transitioned from a third-party app that had to be installed and then executed when you log into the system for the first time via Enter ID, allowed to do some of these things. There is actually a more up-to-date video that I found very helpful. There's a gentleman, Jonathan Edwards. We've mentioned
Ernest
him
Murray.
before.
Sorry,
Say it again.
Ernest Murray. That name was
Ernest
on my.
Ernest Murray. So if you're a Tech Tribe member, head over to there, search it up, search Ernest Murray. He had a great log on that, and I believe he also did a separate video in Intune, and it should be on YouTube with Ray Orsini, I believe, and he did also talk about how he implemented Intune. Again, really great guide. It wasn't over the top, you know, very technical. It was a very straight how an MSP implements Intune into their practice. It was very well spoken, and you didn't get lost as much. Again, going back into the other gentleman that I mentioned, Jonathan Edwards, bearded 365 guy. He had just recently provided a really great, complete Intune guide on how to leverage that, and he's got a wealth of information. I'm actually in talks with him, hopefully to have him come on the show. So I'm going to be reaching out to him again. But he has a great opportunity at showing how you can leverage Intune for that automation. So that's what we did. You know, for us, we have Intune integrated into syncing all the SharePoint libraries down to the system. We've implemented dynamic groups, which helps separate users by particular individuals. And so for some of these terms, we'll have the show notes that kind of go through some of this on some of those websites that describe if you're diving into Intune, here's some of the basics that you want to kind of consider first, which are the attributes inside of a particular user inside of Microsoft. And then with Intune, you can help automate that. And you don't really have to worry about the one-offs where someone got terminated. There's a higher, you know, did you sync all the information properly? Because I can tell you how many times I had technicians back in the day where they would get a laptop and then they would have to sign them in and then schedule a remote session so that they can install all of the applications. And you know, an onboarding when we used to do it in person and also in remote would be about 2.5 hours to go ahead and do. And again, we're not just talking about applications. We're talking about settings. We're talking about printers. We're talking about internet connections, you know, IP setting, things of that nature. And so being able to automate all of that and having the ability to say, hey, I've ordered this laptop from Dell. I've thrown the serial number inside of Microsoft. Hello, user, take this, log in, go take a lunch, let it load for about an hour. All your stuff is going to be there. And so that has been so much more efficient than you hopefully getting all the things in your checkbox that you're manually trying to install. Now, there are some that want to be handsy and want to ensure that they are going remote into the system and log in. But I implore you, automation is a great piece, and it doesn't have to include AI. This is a first step for you to really utilize what Microsoft 365 has and diving into all the tools they have, especially if you start off with Business Premium. But yeah, I'll stop there for my rant on there, and just curious on your inputs for guys on that.
No, I think
Yeah.
that's go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead, Rick. You got it.
No, I think that's great advice, and I think being able to automate it to say, "Hey, we ordered you a new laptop. Sign in with your email, your Entra ID, and just wait, and everything will come." Is just awesome. And just imagine what the client thinks about that too, right? They can appreciate the automation. They can appreciate the ease of use and how then everything is right where it's supposed to be, set up the way it is. The one thing I will say is always document your automation, right? And this is a mistake we made. We had everything running through our Intune, and when you tell it to install something, it constantly checks, right? So if you uninstall something, it reinstalls it. And I couldn't figure that out. Like, we uninstalled something, and I said, I know I did this, and my text said the same thing. I uninstalled this, and then it came back again. And the challenge is, again, just remember, if you set up the automation, you have to also audit the automation as you make changes, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, because you should be constantly auditing, because you need to be updating things that, you adding things to the system that you don't normally, that weren't there before, and removing things from the system that you no longer need. And if you do all of that through Intune, just think about that. You don't have to touch the computer at all. So it's not let me log into your machine, uninstall this and install that. You don't have to touch the computer at all. And that, again, is I hate to say it, but that's the hands-off approach to everything. But it works.
Nah, yeah, I mean, you're hitting it right on the head. Testing, you automate. You need to know what the process is before you automate, and once you automate, you need to test and make sure that it continues to work and is well documented. I think what we're all going back to is, man, there's so much opportunity within the world of Microsoft that you could probably spend your whole time dealing with that and grow your business by 15-20% easily. And I think that's where the show by itself, man. There's so much opportunity inside of it that you have to unpack it. So don't be scared of it. I'd be calling up some people. Hey, reach out to us, and we can definitely have you point you down that direction. But just selling license is not enough. If that's all you're doing, then you're missing the boat, missing the big picture.
Yep. And again, we've been talking about Microsoft 365. We've talked in primarily Windows, but it is versatile to handle other platforms. It can also help onboard Apple devices as well, even down to mobile devices, whether it's iOS or Android, under Intune as well. And not only company-owned devices, but also personal devices as well, to really just ensure that you have your compliance in order as well, and making sure you have those data loss policies available as well. Now, Microsoft, again, is a vast beast. And because of that, there are third-party tools that have been created to help systematize and manage in a multi-tenant fashion. What I would implore you to do is, before you engage in some of these tools, is understand what these things are doing, because a tool can specifically say one thing, and it could possibly go ahead and, for an example, it can go ahead and put a piece in to say, if you go ahead and update this system here, and it says, I don't know, let's say for a check mark of ensure MFA is enabled and it's Microsoft Authenticator. And it turns out that it disabled all other MFA features such as SMS, email, and third-party MFA tools. You're going to have yourself a problem, right? So understand basically as the tools simplify the process, if you don't know what it's doing, it will not allow you to. It's going to be a bad day, and you're going to be digging. You got to hit into support. So I would implore you, engage with your distributor. You know, Corey mentioned Pax8 has a great hardening document that kind of goes around and explains what some of these things will do. Again, some of the resources that we've mentioned as well will help educate to that piece. And then again, that tool that you're using, understand what you're flipping on, because sometimes, you know, you do have to experience it, but other times it's possible that it may end up just causing some problems and kind of moving forward. So you want to make sure that you check those as you move forward on that side. So with that, is there any other additional items, tips, tools, best practices you guys want to talk about?
I tell everybody go dig in. Go dig in.
Go get it.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, everyone, we appreciate you staying on with us here on this episode. If you like what you hear, tune in every week. Both video and audio. You can catch us. Head over to MSPUnplugged.com. You'll see all the links there for your favorite podcatcher. Checking us out on YouTube, where we host our video podcast. If you want to hear more on there, like, subscribe, hit the notification buttons on all those platforms so you can be notified whenever a new episode is out. Don't forget, get your tickets over at MSPUnplugged.com. Both we have Chicago and Dallas now officially has been published September 12th. So we're going to have a great time this year. If you could join us for Chicago or for Dallas, head over to MSPUnplugged.com, get your tickets, and we look forward to seeing you there. And again, thank you for listening, and we will see you next time on MSP Unplugged.